Welcome to Heaping Spoonful, a twice-monthly conversation with restaurateurs, chefs, growers, and others who have helped generate the legends associated with eateries across the Mid-South. The team at Benny Keith is proud to sponsor this adventure with the goal of preserving the stories that have helped cultivate an amazing food scene across the Mid-South. So kick back and enjoy a Heaping Spoonful.
Hello, everyone out there in podcast land. This is Kelly Bass, and I love food. More specifically, I love feasting in so many of the amazing restaurants across the Mid-South, and I love hearing the stories behind them. That's what we're all about here on Heaping Spoonful. Back in the days before Yelp and TripAdvisor, I had the privilege of having a dining review published each week in Little Rock newspapers, a joy I had for the better part of 3 decades. Today, I'm thrilled Heaping Spoonful gets to put the spotlight on Mark Abernathy, one of the true legends of the Arkansas food scene. So greetings, my friend.
Hello, Kelly. How are you, buddy?
Great. So glad to have you, and so glad to have you on Heaping Spoonful.
And hey, before you get started, I just want to say thank you to you for all you have done through the years for the food business. We've had great respect. Your reviews were always really fair and well-reasoned, and that wasn't always the case.
No, I know people their egos get behind it, but I review restaurants from a customer perspective and a food lover's perspective. So I appreciate your kind words.
Thanks for being a friend and doing what you've done for us.
Well, in a couple of minutes, we're going to walk our listeners through the timeline and the many highlights of your career in the restaurant business. But I really want to start earlier than that. So when you were growing up, did you ever think, I'm going to end up owning restaurants and being a chef and doing that whole deal?
Of course not. I graduated from Fayetteville with a degree in banking and finance and still didn't know what I wanted to do because at the time I was a hippie, had long hair and had lots of bad habits that didn't fit in the banking business, was a singer-songwriter. And so I honestly didn't have a clue what I was going to do. I had a degree that I didn't want to use.
Right.
And I stumbled into the restaurant.
So you just went and got a job?
The third Fridays in the nation had just opened in Little Rock, Arkansas, the place that serves the first mixed drinks to the public.
Corner of 3rd and Victory Streets.
Yep. And I happened to be there when that was happening, and several of my friends were the owners, and a little bit older than me, some of them, but... And so I decided I'd just wait tables for a while I decided, and I was a substitute teacher too. So,
oh, wow.
And so till I maybe thought, well, I don't know what I want to do. Well, I really kind of fell in love with the business, and with my degree, they kind of said, well, this guy's got a business degree. Let's give him, which didn't make a whole lot of sense, but I mean, it was a crazy time. And I ended up in management at 22 years old.
Wow. And they're at that Fridays?
At that Fridays. And then a group from Boise, Cascade, they bought the franchise rights for Fridays for Texas. We went to Dallas, opened a big Fridays there. That's the prototype of Fridays all over the place now.
Right.
Big square bar in the middle of the room and all that stuff. And I've never seen anything like it before or since. It was absolutely a crazy success, and we don't realize it now, but at the time there were almost none of these corporate style restaurants even existing. There were maybe Steak and Ale and a couple other little regional restaurants, but within the year we opened Fridays, Bennigan's and Houlihan's both opened their first ones within 2 blocks of us.
Wow.
And 2 blocks down from us was this little green building called Chili's.
Yeah.
And
is this in the 70s?
This is in the early 70s. This is like 1972. 273.
Okay, yeah.
And
Dallas was really starting an upward trend in population and business and all that.
Well, all the boomers were just pouring out of colleges.
Sure.
And I mean, pouring out of colleges and single and new jobs and money. The economy was brisk.
Right.
Then. Bottom line, I was making what I thought was a lot of money.
Sure.
And relatively speaking, had a great job, had lots of girls to meet.
Yes.
And good things happening all around. And so I said, this may be what I want to do.
Yeah. And so there you were in Dallas. And then what was next step? Because I really picked up the story when you got to Little Rock, and we'll get there fairly quickly, but let's hear how it went from there.
Well, quickly, an investment group came and hired me away from Fridays, and I went to San Antonio, helped design, build, and create a knockoff of Fridays in San Antonio.
Yeah.
And I had a piece of the action. And ended up getting out of that and parlaying that into ownership of a live music club in San Antonio, which was really getting into the roots of what I liked. And it was where Jerry, Jeff, and Willie,
sure,
and all these guys hung out and played. It was kind of like a small Bluebird in Nashville. It was the scene for a cool, small venue.
And the Texas singer-songwriter music outlaw country scene was really coming of age.
It was just popping.
Yeah.
So it was a great time to be where I was doing what I was doing. And then after that, I opened another restaurant, a French restaurant. And that's where I got my first real lesson. Because up until that point, I'd kind of been a golden boy. Everything I touched worked.
Right.
College grad, Eagle Scout, early success as a real young guy. And I opened this restaurant, and it failed. And it was the first real failure that I had to deal with. Plus, I was in a marriage I wasn't happy with and some other stuff. And so...
You're still in San Antonio at this point?
Still in San Antonio. And it was... I learned from that ever since that time. You learn so much more from your failures than you do from your successes, if you pay attention.
Right.
And I did. And that failure, I think, really had a lot to do with my ability to do well in the restaurant business from then on.
Right.
And at that point, I decided I would come home and visit my family here in Little Rock. But this time I'd had like 12, 13 years in San Antonio, Texas, and I had fallen in love with the Latin culture.
Sure.
I had designed a number of restaurants in Mexico and San Antonio and just learned, and I spoke pretty good Spanish, and but I'd come home to Little Rock, and the Mexican food here was...
No. It was what we all thought was good Tex-Mex, but we learned later, thanks to you, that it necessarily wasn't so hot.
Yeah, I'm not dissing anybody's Mexican food, but it wasn't the real thing.
No,
it wasn't the real Tex-Mex that I had come to love. And so that's when I opened Juanita's.
Right, which was 1986 maybe?
Yeah, early 86.
Early 86, right. And you had partners, and you guys came in and taught us about things we didn't know about. I mean, from fajitas to, you were the first white cheese dip going to, I remember even the shape of your chips. I mean, it was just a different sort of thing. Plus, it was a fun place because it had the music side of it, too. And you were playing there as well as running the place.
I was in the Torpedoes. I was in the band.
Yeah.
And what was interesting also about that is, because we were talking about this the other day, I wanted to hire a few Latinos to work in there just to give it some flavor, and couldn't find any.
No, there was not a Hispanic community of any note in Little Rock at that point. Now, of course, there are, and that's why the food scene is much, much different. So, again, like I say, you created something fabulous. If it had only been a restaurant, it would have been very successful. If it had only been a music venue, it would have been very successful. But it was both, and you were able to... For those who are around in those days, and again, we're in Little Rock, Arkansas. We know our listeners are all over. Juanita's was the bar side was a very, very small shotgun spot. And then your band was at one end, and we were all packed in there. But then you were able to procure the adjacent space and probably quadruple the size of the room, put in a real stage. We already talked before we started about the sound system you were able to put in. And started getting, as you said, the big names coming, because, again, Little Rock's at the confluence of Interstate 30 and Interstate 40. You're going from Nashville to Dallas, you're going in, or Oklahoma City, you're going through Little Rock.
Well, lots of things were different then. There wasn't an internet. The music scene was different. And there were lots of great bands on the road.
Sure.
On the road a lot. And, of course, if you were traveling between Dallas and Memphis or Dallas and St. Louis or Dallas and Oklahoma City, if you were going east or west or north or south, we could catch them in the middle of the week. And so a band that would play for 7,000 or 8,000 in Dallas, we could get them play for 2,000 or 1,500 in a 350-seat venue.
Yeah.
And because the sound was great, the lights were great, and they got wonderful Mexican food. So...
Sure, and you took care of them.
We took care of them.
And that's the longer I've been around the music business, I've realized, and I know Heaping Spoonfuls about food, but a lot of, again, my great memories there, besides the great food I ate, were the shows that I saw.
The caliber of music there is, when you look at the list, is mind-blowing.
I know, it really, really is. And again, like we were saying, you had been in San Antonio for years, and so it was a large Hispanic community, and the food obviously was Tex-Mex. It wasn't pure Mexican, but it was all the things that we love. But I do believe you were the first restaurant in Little Rock to serve fajitas.
We were. I think we had a guy that came on board with us named Clyde Baker who had this great recipe. It was a friend of Frank's. Had this great recipe for the original cheese dip and our original salsa.
Right.
And we tweaked that a little bit, but I think he had started messing around with fajitas at this little place he'd worked for. But as far as really introducing fajitas to the state of Arkansas, we were the first ones to do that. We did a lot of firsts.
Yeah, and no one can forget the first time they heard and smelled a sizzling platter of fajitas come rolling past, because it wasn't exactly like a saltillo plate or, that we'd been having at other places. And then,
we were hand making tortillas too.
Yeah, which was unheard of at that point in time. Yeah. So and that was great. And again, we're blessed, as most all communities are, to have a really robust Tex-Mex and Mexican food scene here now. But that was a start. It really, really was. And then you guys branched out, and he mentioned Frank. That's Frank McGee, who was, again, a partner and a legend in his own world. We lost him too early in life, and his son Scott's gone on to do great things. We had Scott on a previous episode of Heaping Spoonful, but you guys did something even a little farther off the beaten path when you opened Blue Mesa, which was, again, it's lamented because it didn't last terribly long, but it was. Tell folks about Blue Mesa, how it came to be and what it was.
Well, Frank's in the insurance business, and we had known each other since we were in kindergarten. And he was a really excellent home chef, home cook. He loved food. He was a foodie, and he liked to analyze food. And I've told Scott, who I'm a big fan of, I gave him his first job in the restaurant business, when he's and I just can't say enough about him. But Frank made me a better chef, a better cook, because he would push me. He would come up with a recipe, he'd give it to me, and I'd tweak it. And the main thing I would do is not only just tweak it, but figure out, how do we go from one serving to 400? Yeah. And so you can't just exponentially do it a lot of times. So but his contribution was really, his palate was superb, and he was very helpful. And we both love food, and we went to Santa Fe on a couple of search and destroy missions because we loved the idea of New Mexican Mexican food, which was different.
Very different. And
there was none of that, very little of that going on anywhere outside of Arizona and New Mexico. A couple of things in Dallas and Houston, but so when we opened Blue Mesa Grill, we were serving some of the best Southwest food in the country. Right. And national critics took note of it, and it's probably maybe the restaurant I'm most proud of from a culinary standpoint, because it was so many of the recipes at Juanita's were mine. It came from my experience in Texas and San Antonio with Frank helping out. But the Blue Mesa recipes, that was really a good group effort between Frank and a guy named Vince Sclereth, who's a young guy and very talented too.
And so for people who aren't familiar, there's different chilies involved, and what's in a nutshell the difference in Tex-Mex and New Mexican food?
Well, like we introduced to this market, we introduced first blue corn tortillas. Nobody ever seen or heard those. Black beans. Nobody used black beans. True. We used chipotles. Nobody used chipotle chilies. We used hatch green chilies and roasted green chilies. Nobody did that in their sauces. We used a lot of roasted vegetables, and we did mushroom fajitas. Yeah. We did wild game. We did like ostrich and emu and red deer and venison, all this stuff that was totally you didn't ever find people using goat cheese hardly in anything.
True, too.
We used chevre. We used goat cheese. We put out a goat cheese nacho that I still serve at Red Door now. Yeah. That was one of our original recipes. And it was a completely different taste, and the public went nuts.
Yeah,
They loved it.
I was one of them. It just was a little out west. It doesn't feel as far west as it felt then, but it was out that direction. But no, I know it was a fabulous place, and again, those two unto themselves would secure your position in the list of the Little Rock restaurant annals, But today you own and run two of the most iconic Little Rock restaurants. Loca Luna and Red Door, which you opened Loca Luna in 96, which was just 10 years after you started Juanita's, and it just keeps rocking along.
Yeah, Kelly, a lot of people ask me what happened. Because, why? Two things. One, I owned Juanita's and created that and built it and bought, I was the primary stockholder, all that stuff, for 10 years. And then same thing with Blue Mesa. I wanted to do my own thing. We had Frank and I had some disagreements. And also, when our lease was up at Blue Mesa, it was too high. It was a bad lease, and we were going to have to sign on the line for another 5 years. I didn't want to do that, and not in the corporate structure we had going. So I said, "Look, you guys take Juanita's. I'm not going to sign to go forward with Blue Mesa, and I'm going to go do my own thing." And that's what I did, and it was a great decision for me.
And again, I just mentioned, and we're recording this in right in the middle of January of 2020, but here we are, Loca Luna opened in 96, to do the math, and my wife had brunch there on Sunday, and it was rocking and rolling, and as it was across the parking lot, which we'll talk more about that in a minute. But I remember one of the things that you told me after you got Loca Luna up and running was you realized that while you had an eclectic and interesting menu, that you didn't have what a lot of people considered the staple of particularly a certain number of folks. It's meat and three or meat and two. Mm-hmm. And you did a little research of the places in that area and around Little Rock who served that. And you said, I can do this stuff, but I can do it better. And that's been one of the centerpieces of your menu, lunch menu, particularly at Loca Luna ever since. We just talk about the thought process of trying to perfect something that people kind of take for granted.
Well, one of those lessons I learned from that failure in San Antonio was you need to don't believe your own BS. Yeah. Set your ego aside. Do it's a business. It's a restaurant business.
Yep.
And when you start losing sight of that it has to make money. It has to survive and be profitable as a business. And it doesn't matter how good your food is, how creative it is, how cool your decor is, any of that stuff. It's got to be working.
Right.
And so when the night business at Loca Luna was doing well right out of the box, but our lunches, I thought, two things that I thought would happen. One is Shugs was going gangbusters.
Sure.
And it was
right next door.
Yeah, and it had, in my opinion, had a lot to be desired. And I thought, man, we're going to open this great bar up the street, and there's going to be this giant sucking sound. All these people come running up here to this bar. It didn't happen. Yeah. The other thing that I thought would happen was I had this great, really creative, wonderful lunch menu, but it was hot for like 3 months, and then I just kept watching the needle going down and down and down. I said, well, what the heck? And I drive by Dixie Cafe every day, and that parking lot was packed.
From about 11 o'clock on.
Not only that, having been back in Little Rock for, a number of years now, plate lunches were hot in Little Rock.
Sure.
And I loved them too.
Yeah.
And so I said, okay, people here like plate lunches. I'm going to give them the best plate lunch they can find anywhere.
Yeah.
The highest quality, the best plate lunch. And that's what we did. We didn't have canned turnip greens. We had field greens that we were fresh, and we washed 3 or 4 times, get all the sand out, and then cooked them with pork fat and butter and did them the right way, and real mashed potatoes and all that stuff. And so from that day forward, we carved out a niche as being one of the best plate lunches you can get in the state of Arkansas.
Without a doubt. And, I can salivate right here, right now about the meatloaf, about the pot roast, about all that. Yep. Well, I'll tell you what, I'm enjoying the chat. We're going to come back. Thanks, everyone, for listening today on Heaping Spoonful. We're going to take a short break, and we'll be right back.
I hope you're enjoying this episode of Heaping Spoonful. We at Benny Keith Foods enjoy talking about the food scene almost as much as we enjoy providing the top quality ingredients that help restaurateurs and chefs across the Mid-South create their magic. Now let's dive even deeper into the culinary world with your host, Kelly Bass.
All right, thanks everybody. Welcome back to Heaping Spoonful. We're visiting today with Mark Abernathy, whose long and successful career as one of the pillars of the Little Rock dining scene continues with Loca and a place we're going to talk about right across the parking lot called Red Door, which for more than, Loca 20 plus years and Red Door 10 plus years have really been go-to choices for thousands of diners. So let's talk about Red Door. You opened a spot there. I remember it well, that location. And again, only a certain number of the folks listening to us across the world on Heaping Spoonful know the Little Rock dining scene. That was a Steak and Egg Kitchen, and then it was Peter Brave's first location for Brave New Restaurant, and that's only the front half.
That was the front half.
And that's tiny, and that kind of made it chic to go, or cool to go to Brave New, because you had to fight hard to get a table. And then you bought it, and basically more than double the size, put a full bar in a nice, with booths and tables and bar top tables.
Decks and patios.
Right. And it was Bene Vita, and was fabulous Italian food. So talk about that process and about Bene Vita and what was good about it and what didn't work quite as well.
Well, one of the things that is I guess maybe a blessing and a curse for me is I like to challenge myself and look at new foods and go. I've done this. I want to go to in Italian. I always loved Italian food, and so I said, I think let's do an Italian restaurant. And I felt like there was a hole in the market here for a good Italian restaurant. What I didn't realize is that Little Rock's not a good Italian food city.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not, you go to St. Louis, those people eat Italian food.
All the time.
You go to certain other cities, Chicago, you get to certain other cities, and they eat Italian food. In Little Rock, you had Olive Garden, and you got a couple of really good, you got Bruno's. They do a great job. Fabulous. I mean, great guys. But as a rule, this wasn't a big hot. And I thought I could plug into that. What happened was we became kind of a special occasion
restaurant.
Yeah, let's go there. It's kind of nice upscale Italian food. We'll go there. Well, once again, it's got to make money. And we weren't losing money, but we just weren't making that much. And so I said, look, I think we can change the concept and make more money.
Right.
And Bene Vita, it wasn't, the food was great.
Food was
fabulous.
fabulous.
I was really proud of it and all of those things, but I'm not there to break even, work my ass off and break even. So we said, look, let's try this other concept. And we did, and it worked. Part of it, too, I know you're going to go there, was we kind of hit perfect timing when the brunch thing for the millennials and a lot of folks was all of a sudden just starting to go. Now, Loca already had a 10-year solid Sunday brunch business going, solid Sunday brunch. But I thought, well, maybe we got a little room where we could serve brunch and lunch and breakfast stuff during the week.
Yeah.
And off it went.
No, I know. And again, I remember we've been friends in a long time. I've been eating your restaurants as long as you've had them. And similarly, at least in my mind, you said, there's really not a great plate lunch out there. Well, you know what? There's not a great stack of pancakes out there. Even places that might have pancakes in their name, they're they're mediocre pancakes. Now, you can eat them just like you can eat a fast food burger, and it's a burger, and it's, it does what it does. But man, my wife, Ashley, on Sunday said, I want those pancakes with that fabulous sausage on the side. So, and I operate a business, and I I have a lot of meetings with folks that I need their support. And when we do breakfast meetings, we do them at Red Door because you got a high-quality breakfast. It's a comfortable place to be. But again, you filled that niche. There is not, I mean, you take IHOP and Waffle House out of the equation, there really aren't any breakfast places. You can get breakfast here and there. And so that's really thrived for
I remember us having that conversation. I was told, that was early on. I said, look, it was the same philosophy, though. If there are breakfast places, there's Waffle House and there's IHOP, but there's not a place that and even Loca Luna, which did a great brunch, there were a lot of things that we didn't offer there.
Right.
That I thought, like we didn't serve pancakes. We didn't serve waffles.
No, yeah.
We didn't serve French toast. There were a lot of things that we didn't serve there. And I said, this place, if we're going to do it, though, let's do the best we can. And I remember going to these other restaurants that were famous for their pancakes and saying, God, these pancakes kind of suck.
Yeah.
No. They got their name up there. It says pancakes, and these aren't very good pancakes.
No, I know. And it's been great. And we were talking about again before we started recording, and that, you were on a 45-minute wait Sunday at 10:45 a.m. at Red Door. But with that's a fabulous problem to have. And, and again, I've known you a long time. I walk into Loca Luna. I probably go to Loca Luna more than I go to Red Door, but I see the same faces and the same people and the folks that have been your managers and have been your top waiters. And I mean, everybody I talk to, when you talk about success in the restaurant business, surround yourself with good people. Yeah. And that's what you've done from the get-go.
I'm here not because I was a great chef or because I was super creative or all this stuff. I mean, it didn't hurt. But I'm here because I was fortunate enough to build teams of really great folks. Not just good folks at what they do, but good folks. I always looked for people that had good souls, good hearts,
good people,
good values, good people.
Yeah.
I mean, I often said life's too short to work with assholes, and so I'm not going to do it.
No,
and that we build our team around that. And if somebody happened to slip through the cracks, they'd run them off. And so the reason I'm sitting here today and still, at my age, still actively involved in my restaurants, is because one, I don't have to work very hard. Yeah. So I'm really enjoying doing what I'm doing. But the only reason that's true is because I've got people that have been with me 10, 15, 20 years.
Sure.
She asked, the guy a minute ago asked me about Flap. And she says, you remember a woman used to work for you named Pat or Flap? And I said, yeah, she's been with me since Juanita's.
That's 35 almost years ago.
And, and it's relationship like that not only make the business work, but I treasure that. And I love going in, seeing those people.
Sure.
And my wife jumps on me because I'm always hugging everybody. And she says, you got to watch it these days, all this hugging. I said,
I've been hugging her for 20 years.
Yeah.
If she was going to get mad about it, she'd already been mad.
I don't think they're not going to pull a Weinstein on me.
Exactly. Well, that's, again, we all know, and you know from having lived it for decades, that the restaurant business is incredibly fickle and it's incredibly fragile, and restaurants come and go. I mean, Cajun's Wharf was the legendary anchor of all Little Rock restaurants, and it just didn't become economically feasible to run that place anymore, so it's not there anymore. And so for your spots to hang in there, and we have others in this town. We mentioned Peter Brave and Brave New Restaurant, I mean, that have been around and been around and been around, but boy, it takes a unique combination of good fortune, good luck, and good business practice to make that happen. So congrats on that, and we'll be talking 10 years from now, and I hope those places are still rocking right along. So before we close out on Heap and Spoonful, let's get a little more philosophical. And just along the way of your career, what are the best decisions you made along the way, and maybe the ones you look back on and say that wasn't so smart?
The best decisions probably had to do with gradually learning to put my ego aside and learn from my mistakes. I just, as I said, if you can do that, if you can admit that, something I try to teach my two sons and everybody said, the quicker in life you can learn to say, ooh, that was not right, that was wrong, I was wrong.
Yeah.
That was a mistake, and I'm not going to do that again. And it as a type A personality, it took a while for me to admit that I was wrong.
Well, particularly because you'd been met with success at every turn for a long, long time.
And so that was one of the best things I learned. And the other is surround yourself with good people. Get out of their way. Give them what they need to succeed, and pat them on the back, and then let them succeed. Let them excel.
Yeah.
And
anything along the way I know Benny Vita didn't end up working. Your French place in San Antonio didn't end up working. Blue Mesa had its run, but it made sense to get out of it. I wouldn't necessarily consider those from the outside in as a bad decision, but are there any decisions you did made that you wish you hadn't made?
Well, when you look at business decisions, you don't know a lot that they're bad decisions,
right?
Or you wouldn't do it.
Yeah, that's true.
And so that's, once again, it goes back to the quicker you say, the white knight's going to not come right. And I see this so many times in the restaurant industry. Somebody's riding a horse that ain't going nowhere.
Yeah.
And the white knight's not going to come over the hill and save them. There's not going to be. You made a mistake. This was a failure. The quicker you can admit that, get out, salvage what you possibly can, and move on. And so I don't consider. Remember August in Arkansas, where I lost my butt.
It was a fabulous music festival.
Great,
1994, was it?
92.
92, okay.
Largest musical event in history of the state.
Yeah.
And I just thought that was such a great idea. But I failed to understand that if there's a worst case scenario, it can happen.
Right.
So you better be prepared to accept and live with the worst case scenario before you do anything.
Good point. Yeah, really, really good point. As we wrap, a couple of off-the-wall questions. So you've been in the business a long time. Who are the most famous people that have eaten in your restaurants, and what was that like?
Well, of course, during the Clinton presidential actions, there were lots of folks drifting in and out, politicos and TV personalities.
And himself.
Oh, yeah. Bill used to go, "Hey, Mark, can you bring me some of those chicken enchiladas over to the mansion?"
Yeah.
And I'd go over there and go in the back door of the mansion. State police let me in. We'd sit in the kitchen, eat my chicken enchiladas.
There's a famous picture of him jogging in downtown Little Rock in a Juanita's t-shirt.
Yeah, there is. That was in Time magazine.
Yeah, isn't that cool?
But, of course, we were just around the corner from the governor's mansion, so
yeah,
and Hillary and I got to be good acquaintances, and different. Of course, the musical acts,
right?
They would come, and even if they weren't playing at Juanita's, if they were playing at at Robinson or playing at one of the big venues,
right?
Yeah, and then they would come eat with us, and so we had a lot of those guys drift in and out. And
yeah, that's cool. I remember one time on a Monday night, John Entwistle, who was the bass player for The Who, was rolling through in some kind of solo tour, and I saw John Entwistle at Juanita's with about 50 other people.
Oh, yeah.
Yep. It was one of those great things. What's the crazy? Is there any crazy things that have happened in one of your restaurants?
When I think back, the craziest time of my career was at the very beginning.
At Fridays?
The Fridays days.
Yeah.
We had a tiger by the tail. We were all young partiers.
Right. And it was the first place you could get a mixed drink in Arkansas.
Well, this was the Dallas Fridays.
Oh, Dallas. Okay.
It was a phenomenon.
Little Rock on steroids.
It was a true phenomenon. And every Thursday night it was Thank God It's Fridays, TGI Friday. So Thursday night we had the Thank God It's Friday celebration, and drinks were a special, and they were literally people lined up for blocks.
Yeah.
Not around the corner for a block to get in. And we bought a gorilla suit, and we would do different things with this gorilla. We'd bring him in a helicopter, and I remember one time we backed an ambulance up, and he came out. We had him in a gurney with a Scotch IV, wheeled him into the restaurant. Or we'd get Dallas Cowboys. They hung out there, and of course, a lot of the political folks would hang. So we'd get some of the Dallas Cowboys to come in with the gorilla, and
that's great.
But wild time.
And looking back on that, boy, that just seemed it was fun, but it seemed kind of normal. I remember my first job at the Arkansas Gazette. We had such a great team, and I thought, this is the way work's going to be the rest of my life. And you know what? I've had great jobs and have had a wonderful career, but boy, sometimes some of those early days you look back and go, man, I thought it was all going to be like that.
Yeah. And now I do look back and say, God, I succeeded in spite of myself.
Well, I know the feeling. A lot of the folks at a certain age are that way. All right, my last question for you. So, what advice would you give anyone contemplating opening a restaurant? And don't do it is really not an eligible answer.
The odds are this is a real reality check. It's not as easy. You know it's hard because they fail all the time.
Sure.
You know it's hard because people tell you how hard it is. So just because you can cook, just because you think it would be fun to run a restaurant, you better rethink it. Chances are, even no matter what level you get into, you're not going to make much money. I've worked really hard. I mean, I'm not working much now, but for years, I was a 60-hour-a-week guy.
Sure.
And so there's no shortcut. And you have to have a certain amount of luck, and you can't control that. And so it is not, don't fool yourself.
Yeah.
When you get into it, you better love it, and you better be willing to go to the mat.
Right, and listen to people who maybe know more than you do about whether you're going to have a shot or not.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, listen, Mark, it's always good hanging out. We'll be doing a lot more of this, not necessarily with a microphone in our face, but I appreciate the time. I appreciate everyone listening to Heap and Spoonful. We're committed to 2 of these a month, and we look forward to doing more and having you listen to them. So thank you very much, and sayonara.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Heaping Spoonful. On behalf of all of us at Benny Keith Foods, Mid-South Division, please know how much we love connecting you with the legends of the culinary scene and their unique stories. I look forward to the next time we can offer you another Heaping Spoonful.